Yeah. Hey. Hey. Get your numbers up. I had to get my numbers up. Now I got it like they gave it to me.
What is up, everybody? Pugs here, and I am back with 2 new reviews fresh out the oven. I know, it's been a minute, and I've been itching to get back to video making, and so now that I'm finally here again, I'm ready to cover Season 3 of SpongeBob SquarePants. So much has happened since I last uploaded, but I ain't gonna get into all that because most of it's personal biz. But one thing y'all should know is that I've finished my written reviews of the entire series. I know, crazy. So if you're really impatient about knowing my thoughts on some episodes, just pop into the forum and read the reviews. We could always use new members anyway. And like always, I got the forum link down below in the description. Anywho, all of this is besides the reason we're all here, which is my review of the first 2 episodes of Season 3, The Algae's Always Greener, and SpongeGuard on Duty. Because I have no sense of building suspense, let me just drop a spoiler on y'all real quick. Season 3 is my favorite season of this show. Yeah, not an unpopular opinion by any means, but most of my unpopular opinions result from the fact that I'm modern SpongeBob's defense lawyer, so that's not surprising. And I was going to end things right there and leave what I'm about to say to the end, but some things need to be made clear immediately. SpongeBob SquarePants is a form of escapism for me, and for many of y'all watching too, I'm sure. But there are some things that we just can't escape from, that we can't ignore, and for me, that's Free Palestine till it's backwards. If you don't like it, then leave. We are witnessing a genocide in real time, not just in Palestine, but in Sudan and Congo as well. At this point, anyone who's been on the internet in the last 2 to 3 months should be informed about these atrocities, but I'll be linking some sources to learn more and see what you can do about it in the description. And again, if you want to get pissy about my stance and get mad that I'm getting political in a video about SpongeBob SquarePants, despite the fact that being apolitical is still being political, then by all means leave. I don't play that here. It's our duty as human beings not to turn a blind eye to the genocide that's happening right before our eyes. And that's just what it is. So if you really don't like it, then please get out, because I don't want you watching my channel. Period. Alright. I think that's all I'll say on that in this video. So with all that said and done, let's just get right into these reviews. Starting off Season 3, we've got The Algae's Always Greener. Let's just start by going through what goes on in this episode. This episode begins a bit slow and doesn't really get moving until Plankton uses his transmogrifier. The scene of him traveling to the alternate universe is hilarious, with some great voice acting from Mr. Lawrence and the great addition of that cut to him drinking, which really sells the scene. I like how uncanny the feel of the alternate universe is, because it just feels wrong to both the audience and Plankton, and not in a bad way. Like, maybe it's just me, but even the Krusty Krab itself just feels different throughout the entire episode. And things slow a bit until SpongeBob thankfully shows up for a second time asking for a weekly performance review. And then the jokes kick into high gear, complete with some great visuals such as SpongeBob's face of despair, or the victory screech, or even the great painting of Mr. Krabs. And another thing I noticed is that Squidward's disdain for SpongeBob is a constant in any universe, it seems. Pearl's segment is pretty funny and enjoyable, especially once Nat comes in with a patty that makes the nasty patty look appetizing. Now that Oh My Goodness has become a meme and reaction video, this moment is so much better for me now than it used to be. And then, of course, we get everyone's favorite bit, the reveal of Mr. Krabs taking the place of Plankton. I think it's hilarious that it's only a problem that Mr. Krabs is naked, not Plankton, and that to fight him, they have to use a clothes cannon. SpongeBob is truly about that action in this episode, manning that cannon with the quickness, and striking Krabs with the bra, which, yeah. And then once Krabs is defeated, we get that awesome victory screech. And I think my favorite part of this episode is Mr. Krabs' declaration that he may not have won today, but he'll try again the next day, and the next day, and the next day, and... Okay, I'll stop now. This segment of the episode really goes to show what kind of crap Mr. Krabs has to put up from Plankton on the regular, which Plankton realizes very quickly as he has a mental breakdown. And yes, I know that this is the point of the episode, for Plankton to realize this, but y'all know I love pointing out the obvious. And then, of course, we get one of the standout lines of the episode. Goodbye, everyone, I'll remember you all in therapy. Fun fact, actually, This line is in the running to be the thing that I write on my graduation cap when I decorate it. We'll see if that actually materializes, though. Anywho, I like that this episode ends with Plankton actually learning something and being more content with his life and his holographic meatloaf. It's a good bookend for this episode, and provides Plankton with a small character arc, something we don't normally get out of this show. It makes this episode stand out a bit. And now I'm just going to consider some of my general and random thoughts about the episode. Can I just say, right out the gate, I love the title of this episode. I love how it's just a SpongeBobified version of a metaphor we already know, in English at least. I guess the title doesn't work as well for other countries if it's translated one-to-one, does it? Anyone here have any input on that front? Do other countries translate this episode's title one-to-one? Do other languages have a metaphor similar to "the grass is always greener"? I'm now invested in this question, so if you have any input on that, please comment down below. I'm kind of interested now. Another thing about this episode that I just want to note is that it's weird to think that most of this episode takes place in an alternate universe, and the only reason I'm reminded of this is because on the SpongeBob wiki page for this episode, they make this fact abundantly clear with the character list. I'll link the page so you know what I mean. And thinking of the plot of this one, I really like the story driving the Algae's Always Greener. This whole plot of Plankton apparently having built a alternate universe machine last week for no reason showcases Plankton's brilliance in technology, but his plan also demonstrates his short-sightedness and his fatal flaw, which is his envy. Very tight character writing. And this is something that people love to throw around on Twitter and Tumblr and the like, but imagine if Plankton just abandoned his quest to steal the formula and just made a living selling his inventions or something along those lines. Mans would be rich. Richer than Krabs even. But nah, he's so fixated on obtaining the success that Mr. Krabs already has instead of building it on his own merits. And I think that this episode kind of shows us that in a way. Not the whole part where he can make money off of his own inventions, but how obsessed Plankton is with winning against Krabs in this very specific way. Speaking of good character writing, I also really like that because this episode takes place in an alternate universe, we spend most of our time with the script flipped. For once, Plankton is the protagonist. At least kind of. At the very least, he's in Mr. Krabs' shoes, and seemingly has been for the entirety of their lives. It makes me wonder if, in the universe that Plankton travels to, whether the roles of Krabs and Plankton were reversed as far back as the events depicted in Friend or Foe? Because to me it seems like Mr. Krabs and Plankton have had the exact same lives as each other, which was probably done for simplicity's sake, and to really hammer home the point of the episode, but I have to wonder how this came to be. Y'all know I love overthinking about this show, so I'll just leave this point alone for today. I've got one little random thought about the episode, and that's that one thing that made me crack up for no reason throughout this entire thing, is how Plankton is called Mr. Plankton. I don't know why, but it always makes me laugh whenever a character says that, so that increases my enjoyment of this episode immensely. Alright, so let me just sum things up real quick. Clearly, I've got no problems with the Algae's Always Greener. There are a couple of spots where the episode gets slow for me, but they're not too noticeable. So they're not significant enough to move this episode out of my amazing tier, which is where I'm giving it a 9 out of 10. Next up, we have SpongeGuard on duty. I have much less to say about this episode, although it is also very nostalgic for me, and I'll get to why in a second though. Let me just get to my thoughts on the episode first. And I'll start with this. The plot of this episode is just off. I don't know how else to describe it. SpongeBob desiring to become a lifeguard for the purposes of being cool does not really feel like something he'd do. On one hand, SpongeBob is a weird little dude, so it makes sense that he'd want to fit in, but with the exception of episodes like Grandma's Kisses, so far, all we've seen is SpongeBob be perfectly happy with being the weird little dude. And SpongeBob doesn't really care about being the center of attention, at least most of the time. I'd argue SpongeBob only really cares when his job at the Krusty Krab is involved, and even then, that's only half the time. But anyway, SpongeBob's motivation in this episode makes it a bit of a chore to watch the whole thing because while I'm watching, I just keep thinking, this feels forced. The way Patrick exits this episode in the beginning also feels forced. Everything in this episode feels forced. Most significantly, I think the entirety of the plot after Larry exits is extremely forced. Why is SpongeBob, the brand new lifeguard hired right then and there, left in charge of the beach? If SpongeBob wasn't actually a lifeguard, which he wasn't, shouldn't there have been someone to watch the beach after Larry's shift ended? And yes, I'm aware that I'm taking things too serious, and literally, and blah blah blah, but I can't help, and I can't stop the way my brain works. And I'm not usually the type to get caught up in plot holes anyway, y'all know this, but SpongeGuard on Duty is dull enough that I have to start paying attention to these smaller details, and this makes the whole enterprise fall apart in my eyes. The rest of the episode is more difficult to watch as these questions keep bouncing around in my brain, and the 11 minutes just aren't funny enough to distract me. The excuses SpongeBob makes to get the beachgoers out of the water make no sense to me either, because if they all live in an ocean, why are we singling out sharks and sea monsters? Is SpongeBob prejudiced? I'm slightly joking, and yes, I also know that this was the joke, but I am somewhat serious. The reasoning underneath the plot all feels weak to me, and it's distracting. None of this is to say that the episode is all bad, because it's not, though it is boring. I like the beginning of this episode well enough. Seeing SpongeBob and Patrick hang out at the beach is fun and entertaining and also nostalgic, but I'll talk about that element in a minute. There's also some good visual gags in this part too. The ice cream truck bit is hilarious, not to mention the origin of a reaction meme I rather enjoy, as you all have seen before in my review of Dying for Pie, I think it was. Or maybe it was Pizza Delivery. Or was it Band Geeks? Maybe it was all three? I don't know, I feel like I've used that a few times. Anyway. The drowning scene is probably the most entertaining part of SpongeGuard on Duty outside of the beginning, because of how Patrick keeps disproving everything SpongeBob says no matter how oddly specific it is. And also for once the other doneness of the Bikini Bottomites makes sense, since SpongeBob is being irritating in universe. Out of universe, I don't really mind his behavior. It doesn't work as the source of comedy it's meant to be, let's be clear, but I'm not annoyed by it. However, all the momentum and goodwill that this scene was building dies the moment SpongeBob gets into the water, and then I get bored again. The part where SpongeBob absorbs the lagoon does get a laugh out of me, but then it's back to dullness until Larry returns with a funny line delivery from both Mr. Lawrence and Tom Kenny. And the ending of the episode doesn't really have that great of a stinger either, so the whole thing is rather a disappointing venture. Before I sum everything up, I'd like to share my random thought for this episode. So, SpongeBob on Duty is a pretty nostalgic episode for me, which is a little unfortunate since I don't like the episode all that much, but for once I actually do know why this one is nostalgic, so allow me to put up my little tangent sticker, because I've got a very brief story for y'all. So, when I was very little, I had 2 SpongeBob DVDs. One of these 2 was SpongeGuard on Duty. This means that before I started collecting every episode of the show, which wouldn't happen until I was like 13 or 16, depending on what you count as the beginning of that. This episode was one of the very limited options I had for on-demand SpongeBob watching. And obviously the entire DVD was themed around this episode, so it made an impression on little ol' me. But alas, this doesn't save the episode from lacking many likable qualities. And that, quite nicely, brings me to summing up my thoughts on this one. So, I would not call SpongeGuard on Duty a bad episode, because I don't think it is. I don't even think it's all that mediocre either, because it's better than that. And it didn't really make me mad or annoyed or anything, other than maybe being irritated at my own inability to let go of a plot hole. But this episode is far from great, and I don't think I can call it good either, with how boring it was. It's perfectly okay. It's just a dull episode that tried to be funny and entertaining, but simply fell short. It happens. That's why SpongeGuard on Duty is being put in my okay tier, where it comes in with a score of 6.5 out of 10. Y'all didn't think I would leave without having some closing thoughts, did you? Nah, y'all know how this goes. Here we finally are at the beginning of Season 3. Didn't mean to leave y'all hanging like that, but like I've said a lot of times in a lot of places, the last few months have been so busy. Like, y'all don't even know. And I can't promise that future months won't be busy, but my goal is to at least get through Season 3 before having to go on hiatus again, if I have to do that, because it's just a clean break to go on hiatus after finishing a season. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Just know that I'm committed to getting these reviews to y'all in a timely manner. It's good to be back. Apologies if my mic sounds weird throughout this thing. I did this review entirely on my computer for once instead of my phone. I know, moving up in the world. So at first I tried using earbuds to record, and then I didn't like that, so then I straight up just tried to use my computer's mic. My computer's kind of old though, so the mic is not the best quality. I'll probably try and buy myself a mic at some point, but for now, we're being cheap and frugal. And one last thing I wanted to mention is that y'all might start noticing a change in how I talk about episodes. Personally, I don't think I really make the switch until season 4, but slowly my reviews are going to become more chronological based, as in giving a kind of a recap of the episode, and also more detailed. That's because in the middle of my season 4 reviews, I started having to actually rewatch the episodes before reviewing them, so it's just kind of a natural consequence. But I feel like some of my season 3 episodes were like this anyway, so you might notice that for some of them. Alright, I think that's about it. So I'll end things now, and I'll see you guys in the next review.